if you had the ability to go back in time, would you have a problem with Nick Saban playing Tua Tagovailoa when they were up 35-7 at Mississippi State?
Yeah, I mean, listen, if we could go into the time tunnel, that would be where I would land. It's just one of those, we've all been there in time, Trey, where we make a gut decision and it turns out to be disastrous. My decision today to come on this program. But
that's every week, Paul, just so we're clear. That's an evergreen statement, and we appreciate that.
But I mean, I don't know when I've seen something quite like this where, yeah, I mean, people are screaming at the television around the country, you know, what's Tua doing in there? We all know the backstory, and then something inexplicable happens. I can't remember a time, to add to your previous question, you know, when something like this has occurred. We've seen it in sports history, of course, but this was gut-wrenching, and I realize maybe I'm a little closer to it than some people, but about 3 o'clock on Saturday, it just seemed like there was a collective disgust and sickness around the sports world, and it was because of what we were looking at right there.
Paul, is there any part of you going to the future, knowing he won't be playing ball for a while, that would say, go back to Alabama?
No, not at all. And I know some Alabama fans, Mike, are pushing for that, but Tua has nothing to prove, absolutely nothing. We all know he's a generational quarterback. I think the NFL scouts and GMs know that he is capable of playing at that level. I mean, to go back there and to go through this gauntlet again and maybe to risk getting hurt again, I think is ridiculous. I don't think there's any chance he'll do it, and I don't think there's any reason for him to do it.
So to recap, in the first two questions with our good friend Paul, I've asked about time travel backwards, and you've gone forward into the future.
There you go.
Okay, just
how about the present now?
We cover all the bases. So, yeah, Paul Finebaum with us here.
You know what I'm afraid of, though, guys?
Yeah.
If I went back, I'm not sure I'd look any better at 16 than I do now at this early morning.
I've seen the photos, Paul. You were sexy.
Well, I didn't want to say it, but maybe next week. My high school shot, I've always joked that if I had stayed with a full head of hair, I would be so dangerous right now that it would probably infringe and endanger my career.
It's amazing. My son thinks the exact same thing.
I said, Paul, Paul, right there with you. As Paul Finebaum joins us. He's brought to you by Dr. Pepper. Get your local store today and grab some delicious ice cold Dr. Pepper, the official drink of Fansville, now playing everywhere college football games are played. Paul, just one handsome guy asking another handsome guy at this point. With all this being said, and Mac Jones now at the helm for Alabama, are they really, like, truly out of this playoff conversation?
Mike, I know it's easy to say Alabama's done. Those are phrases we haven't ever used before, but I'm not quite ready to do that. I think it would take a confluence of events that we have seen before in the college football playoff and in the old BCS. I think it may be too much, but if play the if game. I mean, this week Alabama will be widely ignored playing Western Carolina, and they should be. But next week, if they go down to Auburn and look good, I mean, I don't think you have to score a lot of points and beat Auburn convincingly. I mean, we're talking about winning at Auburn, a team that I know some will say, hey, they'll be an 8-4 team if Alabama beats them. But this is a team that has gone to LSU and played a one-possession game, has gone to Florida and played a very good game, lost to Georgia. I mean, some of the scores are quirky. They're all tight. Some of the games Auburn looked like they should have been out of, but they're still a really good team. And the Auburn defense is elite. It may be as good as I've seen this year in college football.
That kid Brown up front is ridiculous. As Paul Finebaum was with us from the SEC Network. Okay, Paul, not going into the future, but just a prediction tonight. What do you expect the rankings to be when they come out?
Yeah, I don't think they're going to be any different, although I do think as we flip the switch, you know, I think this is LSU's last week at number one. I still think they're being gifted for what happened last week against Alabama. But if you watch the LSU Ole Miss game, it was scary how porous the LSU defense looked. I mean, they were gashed for more than 400 yards. And I think next week, assuming Ohio State beats Penn State, the Buckeyes will be back at number one. And I think you're going to see some movement, maybe even for Clemson in the future, because even though they're still playing a group of nobodies, they are looking very convincing in that. But I think tonight nothing changes. There's some debate whether Alabama moves down or not. I'm really interested in the Pac-12, especially Oregon. They have looked really good lately. I don't think Oklahoma is looking all that great. So, I mean, the action is going to be after the 4 position, but quite frankly, tonight, not to turn anyone away from ESPN at 7 p.m., but I think it will be status quo.
And then what at 8 o'clock?
Or Twitter at the college, the rankings reaction
Yeah,
show.
exactly.
Myself and Jason Fitz and a number of others there. You should absolutely check out because a bunch of wild stuff's going to happen. Don't listen to Paul. Cheez-Its.
Hey, Paul, I think, and I think others think, LSU, Ohio State, Clemson, Georgia, Minnesota, Penn State all control their own destiny. If you disagree, you can let us know that. Do you think either Oregon or Utah control their own destiny?
Not to the same degree, but I think as Oregon moves through this process, and listen, I mean, I'm one of many who wrote them off in early and late September, but it's going to come down to if they run the table, a last-second loss to a good Auburn team. We've already discussed them, and they probably should have won that game going away. They just let it get away. I think Oregon is the team to keep your eye on, but no, I mean, it's not a guarantee that Oregon wins out and they are in. That is not something I'm willing to say right now.
Well, listen, one thing we are willing to say is the Pac-12 is in a lot better shape than the Big 12.
Yes, they are.
That
Without
much we can
question.
say with great certainty. Yeah. I'm dealing with it, Paul.
Yeah.
I'm dealing with it.
And listen, I mean, Jalen Hurts is the only person I know that, because of his ineptitude in the first half, he made up for it in the second half and got back in the Heisman race because they were down so much. And all we remembered by about 11:30 on Saturday night is how well he played in the second half, not how poorly he played in the first half.
Very true.
I don't
Any play by him.
I don't count anything that happened after halftime, so I don't know what you're talking about.
Thank you for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports and analysis, download the ESPN app, and for live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN Plus.